The Palestinian resistance released 3 of the Israeli prisoners of war who were held in Gaza for over 470 days. Now Israel is due to release the Palestinian prisoners from Israeli prisons. However, there has been a delay. Now, when it comes to the delays, when Israel delays the release of Palestinian prisoners, they do that deliberately. The first thing that Israel has done is they went to the prisoners' families' homes and they threatened them. They warned them, you can't have any celebrations, you can't have any sweets, members of the families can't come and accept them and welcome them home. Israel wants to prevent any sort of happiness when it comes to the Palestinian prisoners. They're that weak when it comes to, as a state in general, they're afraid of flags and they're afraid of people being happy and communicating. Very fragile, very weak. So this is one of the reasons that they're delaying the release of the Palestinian prisoners. We're due to get about 90 prisoners out, mainly women and children, from Israeli prisons who have been imprisoned under what Israel calls administrative detention. And the next phases are going to take place now in the next few days when it comes to Gaza. However, one of the biggest things that happened today is the scene that came from Gaza, the images of the Palestinian resistance fighters roaming the streets of Gaza. This was one of the images that was released following the release or during the release of one of the Israeli prisoners of war. And this happened in Gaza, in the northern part of Gaza. So Gaza City is in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Thousands of Palestinian fighters went out in the streets to prepare for the release of the prisoners of war, and they were cheered and welcomed by the Palestinian crowds. And there were more images circulating of the fighters of the Palestinian resistance with the people celebrating in Gaza. Now, this received a lot of criticism inside of Israel. There were already images, articles being published in Israel because the Israelis were watching live. They were waiting for the moments when the Israeli prisoners of war will be released from Gaza. And this was one of the images posted from Israel, clearly seeing the soldiers of the Palestinian resistance preparing to release the Israeli prisoners of war. More images of thousands of fighters came out from Gaza, and the Israeli newspapers and the Israeli public, all of them started talking. How can this happen? So some of the things that were being mentioned in Israel. How did this happen? How did this happen? What have we done in Gaza for the past 15 months? Hamas clearly won, Israel clearly lost. So we were told we defeated all of them. A year ago, our government told us that they took down 20 out of the 24 brigades of Hamas. How comes they have thousands of fighters now with all of these vehicles inside of Gaza? Articles being released on published on several websites really in Israel. One of them is in the Jerusalem Post, saying Hamas emerges from Gaza's tunnels, showing it never lost. It never lost. Mm-hmm. But it's the lie that Benjamin Netanyahu sent to the Israeli public that the Palestinian resistance lost. Today's scenes prove to everyone that the Palestinian resistance can never be beaten, and is a clear signal that Israel was humiliated in Al-Aqsa flood. The fact that the Palestinian resistance did not surrender is remarkable. It's something fascinating. It's shocking the whole world how they were able to continue despite all of these Israeli attacks and barbarism and genocide and destruction, mass destruction when it comes to the Palestinian neighborhoods, towns, cities, all across of Gaza. There were a couple of things that Israel noted and spoke about, actually. And there are several things that are about to happen following the release of the Israeli prisoners of war. The first thing that's going to be done when the Israeli prisoners of war are going to reach Israel is the psychological warfare, and the brainwashing will start from Israel. Israel won't allow them to speak with the media directly because they've learned a very big lesson after the press conference that was done by the first Israeli prisoner of war who was released on a humanitarian basis that Israel did not want to actually accept, Yocheved Lifshitz. When she was landing bombshells in that press conference, saying how well she was treated from the Palestinian fighters, how much they cared for her, and they were very considerate and merciful with her. And she criticized Israel and the Israeli army. Now, of course, Israel will automatically start brainwashing the prisoners of war to reverse everything when it comes to their experience. Of course, no, imprisoning is a nice experience at the end of the day. However, Israel will try and, of course, brainwash them as much as possible, tell them you've been, terrorized there, these people are this and that, and try and force them to speak like that when it comes to public engagements. And there were instances with some of the Israeli prisoners of war who were released, like Noah Argamani, for example, who criticized the Israeli media. Said that I wasn't actually hurt by the Palestinian resistance, I was hurt by the Israeli army. Throughout all of my body after several strikes, Israel killed almost a third of their prisoners of war in Gaza with their airstrikes. Now, they're going to have the psychological warfare against their own prisoners of war being released, and they will try and prevent any scenes of joy coming from the Palestinian side. They're going to try and do that by delaying the release to later hours, and by putting pressure on their families and putting pressure on their relatives and loved ones. One thing that the Palestinian side has done this time that's different than previous times is there were reports that the Palestinian resistance asked the Israeli authorities to provide those who will be released this time with a legal letter of amnesty. A legal letter of amnesty, meaning legally Israel cannot imprison them unless they actually did something illegal. So Israel rearrested many previous prisoners who were released in previous deals without any reason, again using administrative detention to detain them, to imprison them again, and they continue to delay their release and prolong their imprisonment. This time, Hamas are trying to counter that by having this amnesty letter. That means if those who are released do not engage in any actions against Israel, Israel has no legal basis, even with the Israeli courts, to imprison them again. Does Israel have a backdoor to that? Perhaps. Again, administrative detention on its own could be a backdoor, because with administrative detention, you do not have to provide any sort of evidence to imprison the people. But what's for sure is Israel will be releasing them. And we're only talking about the first knock. The second very remarkable thing that I wanted to talk to you about is the fact that the Palestinian civil services have already begun to work all across of Gaza, and Hamas declared that they will be deploying all of their civil services, including the police, throughout all of Gaza's provinces. Every single one of the Gaza provinces, the Palestinian police will be there. And there were videos of police officers going, speaking with the people, confirming everything, and also rescue services coming from the all parts of Gaza, going through the streets, preparing to start taking down some of the rubble. And many of them also posted images of them celebrating after the ceasefire agreement, alongside, of course, the medical teams, medical staff, and the journalists in Gaza finally having a break after this long genocide. Now, when it comes to the implementation, Israel had a delay in implementing the ceasefire, and they conducted attacks on Gaza after the ceasefire took effect in the morning, up until, according to Israel, they received the names list from Hamas. Now, when it comes to the names that were due to be provided to Israel yesterday at 4, there was a delay indeed from Hamas. Why was that delay? There are no confirmations why there was such a delay. However, Hamas, from their side, they also said that for us to provide names, Israel must have no activity whatsoever in Gaza, because they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be exposed, because Israel would want to kind of obtain any bit of information about those fighters, where they're coming from, where they're going to move, so that they can know where these people were hidden, where Hamas or the other Palestinian resistance movements were putting these Israeli prisoners of war for all this time. And despite Israel using everything on earth and getting support from foreign countries to try and find their whereabouts, they haven't been able to find them. The shocking thing is, some of them were in North Gaza. Now, reports said that 2 of them today, they were actually released from the northern part of the Gaza Strip, the part where Israel was conducting a mass genocide campaign in what they called the General's Plan. Yet they didn't see them. And there are many things that the Israeli public and many observers worldwide cannot have any answer to. Where did these thousands of fighters pop up from all of a sudden in North Gaza? How come some of these prisoners of war were still held in North Gaza despite such heavy Israeli bombardment? Many questions. How comes they're so powerful? Where did they get their vehicles from? Israel destroyed so many vehicles. All of these questions are very valid. And if they indicate one thing, one primary thing, it's about how much of a failure Israel as a state is, and how much of just a simple case of destruction this whole genocide was as well. Israel has proven that it's totally incompetent when it comes to warfare. They haven't been able to defeat what is labeled as the weakest link even in the resistance fronts, which has clearly shown that it's the actual front that Israel has no chance whatsoever of defeating ever. Again, that notion might have to be reconsidered now, but when we talk about the fronts, we talk about how heavily armed they are. But what Gaza has done in the past 15 months with its people and with its heroic resistance is remarkable, is beyond any comprehension. So the vibes in Israel are vibes of tragedy, and many people are getting affected by it. Many people are getting affected by these images of celebration in Gaza, and the fact that the Palestinian resistance is present everywhere. When Benjamin Netanyahu was saying, we won't stop the war until we eliminate the Hamas and destroy them, hurt their capabilities, that they dismantled all of their brigades a year ago and there's only 4 left, with there's no way that Hamas is going to be there the day after, and we won't stop the war until we get our prisoners back and destroy the Hamas too. All of that talk, all of these lies for the past 15 months, all of this propaganda, everything, despite the fact that we've been exposing much of it, of course, but all of it is collapsing in just 1 or 2 photos that we can see. 1 or 2 photos circulating from Gaza. And one of these photos was the photo of the Israeli population seeing what's happening in Gaza. And on the other side, the Palestinian people celebrating. The Israelis were watching the Palestinian resistance and just, very sad and shocked by what they see. And the Palestinians are fighting, celebrating inside of Gaza, alongside the population. One thing that Israel also added is that the Palestinian resistance gave the prisoners of war gifts. They had 2 bags with them, and according to reports in Israel, they included journals and photos and a map of Gaza. And clearly, the Palestinian resistance, they treated them very well based on how they looked from their release. And well, they're giving them gift bags as well. Israel's, of course, trying to manipulate that too. But the images of the released Israeli prisoners of war indicate how well they were treated by the Palestinian resistance. And Israel also said that they were given graduation certificates. Not sure what that's about, really. The Palestinian side didn't say much. Maybe we'll listen to some more elaboration when it comes to the Palestinian resistance. However, what's for sure is that these first scenes coming now from Gaza on the first day of the ceasefire have shocked not only everyone in Israel, but they also shocked the whole world from the level of bravery of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian resistance, and the fact that they haven't been defeated and did not surrender despite 15 months of continuous genocide and bombardment. The fact that Israel hasn't been able to do anything despite all of its barbarism in the past 15 months shows how much of a failed state it is. It's such a failed state that they're scared of people accepting their prisoners. They're such a failed state that they're scared of flags. And the fact that the Palestinian people are smiling now in Gaza bothers them so much, by the way. Bezalel Smotrich was threatening, right? We will wipe the smiles off your faces. We will go back to destroy all of you. We will do this and we will do that. Thinking that he can, threaten people who haven't been intimidated by anything. And the final thing that I wanted to mention is, apart from the initial breach of Israel due to the delay, according to Israel, of the names list being provided by Hamas, there were no other significant breaches when it comes to the ceasefire. All of these things indicate that we're talking about a serious ceasefire that will be very strong, most likely. And there were also videos of Israeli forces withdrawing from Gaza yesterday. Yesterday we spoke about the Giv'ati withdrawing from Gaza without any order coming from them from Israel to be deployed again in Gaza.